Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Brick Roll. Alright, I got a little bit of a project I want to work on today. Let me show you what's on the agenda. This, as you may have guessed, is my trailer. I've done a few projects on that. You remember when I bought it and stuff like that. I've gotten some good use out of it, but for the most part, it lives in the backyard, kind of next to the shed, which means it's a little exposed to the elements. And I noticed recently that some of the paint on some of the metalwork here is rusting and coming off. And so I want to make sure we can get that cleaned up. We can stop that before that becomes a problem. Right now it looks just superficial. So what I want to do today is to get all the rust off, sand it off, and repaint this. I'm just going to use some spray paint from Home Depot to do that. I think it doesn't have to be anything real special, but the Rust-Oleum that they have there should give me a pretty good coating and hopefully prevent this from happening again. That's the job for today. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use my orbital sander with a rough grit sandpaper, and I think will help pull off this, and it'll also get rid of some of the surface rust on the metal so we can get down to bare metal, because that's what's got to happen. If I'm going to repaint this thing, it's got to be bare metal. Now I was looking at sandpaper discs for my orbital sander, and I was looking at this and it's like, yeah, the grit on this is not coarse enough to do what I need to do. And I realized, most often what I'm doing with the orbital sander is woodwork. And so with the woodwork, you don't really want to have a real coarse bit. You want to have real fine bits. And about as real coarse as I go is 100. And you can say I go down to 320 at some points here on this for the real fine stuff. So I had to run over to Home Depot to get something coarser. And I found a good 60 grit. And that was about as low as I could go. I would have actually liked to have seen like a 40. But I think 60 will do good work with this. So next thing I got to do now is just go at the metal on this, get it down to bare metal, and then while I was there picking up the sandpaper discs, I also got some paint, so we're ready for that point too. Okay, so I've spent a bunch of time on this. I've gone all the way around, kind of hit all the places that had some rust on it. Obviously it was down here. This is the bottom edge of the trailer, and it was all across the bottom. I've been trying to actually figure out what happened and why this area of the trailer seems to be so much more susceptible to the problem than it is when you get in the back, because you don't see any of this problem back here. Yeah, it's dirty, but you don't see any parts where the paint is rusting and peeling off. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, when I'm in the backyard and have this thing parked back there, that thing that's usually right now on the blocks is on the ground, so the whole trailer is usually tipping forward a little bit. So when rain falls on it, it kind of follows the edges here down to the bottom, and rather than pouring off of the trailer, it kind of sits there until it evaporates. And repeated rainings have caused this to do it, because it's right here at the bottom, and you'd think any rain that hits here is going to run down this thing, but it's going to tend to kind of hold to the edge here. And so when it gets down to this point, it's likely to just kind of stay here once again. And the same with the bottom corner on the other side over here. So if we're going to maybe prevent this from happening again, we're going to have to try and figure out what we can do to protect that a little better. I did at one point have a tarp on this thing, but the tarp was kind of a mess to keep under control, and flash kept getting tangled up in it, and there were all sorts of reasons I kind of stopped using it, but maybe we got to come up with some other thing. Anyway, I want to give this a little bit more of a cleaning, probably hit it with a little isopropyl alcohol just to get any grease or anything that are on the metal off of the metal, so that when I repaint it, it will stay sealed very securely, and hopefully will create that rust barrier we need to protect this thing in the future. Alright, I just had a little inspiration here. I did notice that there was a little bit left of rust in some of the grooves in the metal, and I wanted to try and get rid of that, because you really want to try and get rid of all rust before you try repainting it. And I started thinking, wait a second, I've got some CLR in the kitchen, and that stuff does a real good job of dissolving, among other things, rust. That's what the R in CLR is. And so I whipped up kind of a heavy-duty batch. It is about a 3-to-1 ratio. Got a Scotch-Brite out here, and basically all the rust just came off really nicely. And the metal looks a lot better now, a lot more bare, and a lot better position, I think, to accept the paint that I'm gonna hit it with. Now, now that I have used a very concentrated acid on this. I wanted to make sure we definitely got that off, so I used basically some Windex, because Windex has ammonia in it, and ammonia tends to cut grease and anything like that that might stick to the metal, and it also evaporates fairly quickly, so I can get it painted really quickly. In fact, as soon as I finish filming this scene here, we are going to begin the painting process. Catch up with you in a few. Alright, so I got the first coat of the paint on. It actually looks 1,000% better. So we're going to let this dry for a little bit. We're going to see how it looks afterwards, and like I said, we may hit it with another coat, at least maybe on the top. I've tried to give it a good shot both on top, on the side, and on the bottom, because it actually looks like the rot actually first starting here, and then it started building back as it breached it right here on this edge. So I've tried to make it a point to give it a real good solid shot right on the edge, so we got a good coating there, and make sure there's no pathways in that moisture can get in, because that's the enemy. And then, like I said, the next thing we got to do maybe is figure out how to make it so the water drips off of here or doesn't end up accumulating here again, so this doesn't happen again. Anyway, I'm going to give it a little time to dry, and I'll catch up with you in a bit. So a little time's gone by, the paint's had a chance to dry. It looks all right. It looks a little bit different, but you know what? I'm not exactly looking to match this. This isn't a designer trailer. It's utilitarian. It's not for looks. So I got it covered up. I got the rust off, and I think we're going to be in much better shape now. I'm going to actually give it a little bit more of a coat on the surface just to make sure we get it nice and well covered. But yeah, I think that's all I had to do on this one. Like I said, I got to try and figure out a way to deal with the way the water accumulates on it. I used to keep a tarp on it, but that kind of caused problems, because Flash would get under there, she'd get all tangled up in the tarp, and there was all sorts of problems. She couldn't get out, and I was concerned about that. So I don't know, maybe the solution on this is just not to have that thing sitting on the ground. I'm going to have to have some sort of a platform that the trailer hitch can sit on, so that it's a little bit more level, or maybe even tipping back a little bit. Maybe we'll have less of an issue. So I'm going to get this back out into the yard, but I think we've wrapped up this video for today. So thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.